Okay, so I'm here to explain what happens when planets go retrograde. And I'm gonna explain the planets Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars. I'm not gonna do Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because I'm more so of a Vedic astrologer, more so of a Vedic sidereal astrologer, and those outer planets are not really utilized. And of course, you can't do Sun and Moon because they do not go retrograde. And retrogrades are really not the end of the world. They're pretty simple. A lot of people sort of blow them up and give them more emphasis than what they need to and what they deserve, in my opinion. You know, it's almost like some, I don't know, like some fear mongering. Like people, like how people prepare for like a snowstorm or bad weather and they just start panicking and hoarding and shit. That's how I feel when I see people talk about retrogrades. So the first planet I'm gonna talk about when it goes retrograde is Mercury retrograde. What is Mercury? Mercury rules the third house and the sixth house. It rules Gemini, it rules Virgo. The Gemini side is the hands and the nervous system. Gemini rules the third house. Short distance travels, communications, younger siblings, social media, technology. In the sixth house, which is the intestines and everyday conflicts, everyday struggles, everyday problems. And you need a analytical, sharp mind to conquer and deal with those everyday matters and everyday problems. So when you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, you know, the person is, the way that they think, the way that they process and solve a problem is a little bit more slower. When any planet becomes retrograde, the qualities and traits of that planet become introverted. They become a little bit slower, and their qualities a little bit more internalized versus externalized. So Mercury and retrograde native, they'll just think slower. They'll think twice. They'll be a little bit more careful when they speak. They might possibly have maybe some speech impediments, some speech problems, but short and simple, it's almost like these people just naturally, they'll measure twice and cut once. They'll likely not the type of person who can answer something and solve something and think and process something quickly at like on the spot. They need some time to think before they come up with an answer to answer your question or to solve a problem or whatever. They need time to think. They need time to reflect. So the way that they think is naturally a little bit more slower, as they are just a little bit more conscious of what they're saying. Their speech might be a little bit more, it might be slightly impaired, or they might speak a little bit slower so they can, you know, make sense of what they're saying and don't mess up what they're saying. But ultimately, a Mercury in retrograde in your birth chart isn't bad. You'll just think twice. You'll be a little bit more careful. They put more time and thought into what they're going to say and how they're going to communicate and solve something. That's all that the person with the Mercury in retrograde will do. Now, to see the effects of a transiting Mercury in retrograde, what you would do is see what house Mercury is in, will be transiting in your birth chart. And then you'll see the two houses that Mercury is influencing, which is Virgo and Gemini. You'll see where those two houses are at your birth chart. And by combining the houses that Mercury is influencing in your birth chart and the house that is transiting, you might be able to come up with your own analysis to see how that retrograde will affect you. The Mercury retrograde will affect you in regards to the houses that it rules in your birth chart. That's what the Mercury will do. Mercury retrograde does not mean your ex is going to hit you up. It doesn't mean they're going to text you and come back and say, I miss you, I love you. It's possible, but it's not definite. Mercury doesn't have nothing to do with love, as I just told you. It has everything to do with the third house and the sixth house, and communication and solving problems and whatnot. So now we're going to move on to the next planet, which is Venus. Now this is the planet that has a more bigger, greater significance and influence on love and a greater chance of your ex wanting to hit you up. But what is Venus? Venus rules the second house and the seventh house. The second house is Taurus, ruled by Venus, and represents your personal finances, the family that you came from, and it rules the throat. The 7th house represents your spouse, your, the person you'll get married to, the ideal partner you want. It can represent maybe how things might be once you're like in a serious committed relationship. It can represent business contracts, business agreements, close intimate friendships with friends and shit. That is the 7th house. So what is Venus in general? Venus can represent sex. Venus can represent money. It can represent women. It can represent love, the way we express our love, the type of romantic partners that we attract. That is short and simple what Venus represents. So when Venus is retrograde in your birth chart, the way that you express your love is a little bit more careful and cautious, and more cautious, and you're more conscious of the way you just express and just be. You're a little bit more self-aware of how you express yourself romantically. You might be a little bit more slower to open up and share how you feel and share your feelings with people and whatnot. And you might attract partners who are the same way. They might be slow to open up and express their feelings. Or these people, they might spend so much time reflecting on their feelings and stuff that, they can give you mixed signals. They can sort of possibly lead you on because they're not entirely sure about how they feel about you. So if you have this, you might be not entirely sure how you might feel about someone. You might just be thinking and reflecting, well, I think I like her, or I think I like him, and you might attract partners who might be the same way. These people potentially, they might be a little bit more cautious about how they spend their money because Venus naturally rules the 2nd house. So they might be a little bit more cautious of how they spend their finances and money and whatnot. But that's just about it that I can really think of at the top of my head when Venus goes retrograde in your birth chart. And same thing with Mercury. When Venus is transiting, you want to see what house Venus is going to be in your birth chart, and you'll want to see the 2 houses that Venus rules in your birth chart, which would be wherever Taurus and Libra is. And something involving those 3 houses will be affected with the retrograde. That requires you to have a good analysis and a good eye to be able to come up with, what will happen during the transiting retrogrades. If not, go book a birth chart reading. But anyway, the next planet is Mars. Mars rules Scorpio and Aries. Mars rules the 1st house and it rules the 8th house. Mars can represent brothers. Mars can represent weapons and knives and fire and haste and patience. Fast food, because it's something that is cooked fast under fire, and Mars is all about taking action. That's what Mars is. So like I said, Mars rules the 1st house with Aries, which is the ascendant. Our personality, part of our personality, part of our face, our body, how we present ourselves to people. And Mars rules the 8th house of Scorpio, which is the occult, hidden knowledge, our spouse's family, our spouse's wealth, death, inheritance, astrology. Well, I'm not gonna say astrology, but that's the house that the 8th house represents, astrological mysticism. But Mars rules that house. So when Mars goes retrograde in your birth chart, some of Mars in their birth chart, they might be a little lethargic when it's in retrograde, because like I told you, the qualities of planets, their energy, it becomes a little bit more internalized and not so much outwardly expressive. So these people might not be the most athletic, possibly. They might not be the most energetic. They might be, like I said, they might be lethargic. They might want to spend and use and utilize their energy more cautiously, more wisely. They might not want to do a whole bunch of physical labor. They might not be so quick to anger. They'll reflect and think more on why they're mad and why they're doing this and whatnot. That's all I can really think of with Mars retrograde in your birth chart, because like I said, it represents how we express ourselves. It represents like our sexual energy. These people might have they might have great control over themselves in general. They might have great self-control. And that can go in regards to sexually too. You probably can see this for Venus and Mars. They have great self-control over themselves sexually, because they can possibly be so wishy-washy, they can be so reflective, the qualities can be so internalized that they'd be like, do I want to be with this person, or do I not want to be with this person? Do I want to sleep with this person, do I not want to sleep with this person? Or I'm not really too pressed to be with this person, I can wait a little bit longer. These people, they could be a little bit more have a little bit more self-control over themselves when it's retrograded in their birth chart. But of course, you have to see entire person's birth chart to see everything about them. You cannot analyze one part of a person's life by looking at one placement. You got to look at multiple things. So the things that I'm saying, they'll just apply to if this planet is retrograde, and there's nothing else that can alter what I'm saying, which is like a needle in a haystack, which is like almost impossible. But these are some of the things you'll see with a retrograded Mars in your birth chart. Mars transiting, same thing. You look at what house is in. You look at the two houses that it rules, which is Aries and Scorpio. And then you'll have to use your own analysis, make your own educated guess to see how that retrograde will be affecting you in regards to the two houses in your birth chart and the house that it's transiting. Potentially, since Mars represents weapons and knives, you know, things that doctors use, it probably wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that if you want to go get maybe some medical procedure done, it probably wouldn't be so best to do it during a retrograded period. And especially depending on what house is transiting, but it probably wouldn't be so best to get any like medical procedure done that will involve cutting and sticking during a Mars retrograde. Of course, you have to see other things in your birth chart, but that's a little cool little fun fact, you know. Not saying you can get surgeries done during a Mars retrograde, but in general, it'd probably be best if you can to not get anything seriously done. But if you do get something done during a retrograde, you're not going to die. It ain't the end of the world. But moving on, we're going to move on to Jupiter. What happens when Jupiter goes retrograde? Jupiter rules Sagittarius, it rules Pisces. It rules the 9th house and the 12th house. The 9th house represents long distance travel, things that we learn from our father, our belief system. It's a house that relates to finding God and, you know, religion and all that good stuff. And the 12th house is isolation, imprisonment, foreign lands, foreign travel, spirituality, and that type of stuff. So when Jupiter, and what is Jupiter? Jupiter represents divine knowledge, divine wisdom. It's a very philosophical, esoteric planet. A good, well-placed Jupiter can make you very good at learning and teaching astrology and going about learning and maybe teaching tarot and Akashic records and Reiki healing. Make you go about doing those things and learning those things in the right way and being very good at it. Jupiter can represent a husband in a woman's birth chart. What else with Jupiter? Those are about the main major things. Jupiter is a guru. So when Jupiter is retrograded in your birth chart, you might be someone who might be a little bit more cautious and careful to speak up and express your maybe political beliefs, your religious beliefs, your astrological conspiracy theories. You might be a little bit more careful and maybe wanting to learn and express your tarot knowledge and skills. You'll be a little bit more reflective and cautious in all the things in association with Jupiter. But there's nothing the matter with that. When you take time to think and reflect, you know, you'll usually come out with a better, well thought out answer and plan. It doesn't pay all the time to be the first person to have your hand raised. It doesn't pay all the time to be the first person to just, you know, give an answer if what you're saying doesn't make sense, if what you're saying is dumb. Retrogrades in general are not bad things in your birth chart, because they make you think, they make you reflect. The qualities are more internalized, and you'll make better and more wiser decisions when you have retrograded planets in your birth chart. It's nothing the matter with being a late bloomer. You don't need to be the first one taking action and doing things. So, like I said, a retrograded Jupiter will do all those things. You might possibly be a little bit slower to wanting to learn and accept astrology or other religions outside of your belief system, or just things in general outside your belief system. You might be slow to change and adapt and want to learn those type of things, whatever, outside of your belief system. Like I said, there's nothing the matter with it. If you're going to be possibly offering and doing like maybe some candle work on people, or offering and doing birth chart readings on people, it's best to be skeptical and question things versus just jumping into something and accepting and learning everything and not questioning everything, just believing everything you hear and stuff. So, like, there's nothing the matter with having a retrograded Jupiter or a retrograded planet in general. You'll just take some cautious and discernment before you raise your hand and give an answer. You'll be skeptical a little bit. You'll be saying, do I really want to do this egg cleanse? Do I really want to go jump to sidereal astrology when I've been accustomed to tropical astrology? Do I really want to tell these people my crazy alien theories and stuff? You'll at least be a little bit more cautious. So when Jupiter is retrograde transiting, same thing as I said with all the other charts. Look at what house Jupiter will be transiting. You look at the two houses that Jupiter will rule, which will contain Sagittarius and Pisces, and you have to make your own discernment. If you have struggles with that, whatever, book a birth chart reading. And the last planet, which should be Saturn, we'll make sure I did Mercury, I did Venus, I did Mars, I did Jupiter. So yes, it is only Saturn left. Saturn rules Capricorn, Saturn rules Aquarius, Saturn rules the 10th and the 11th house. The 10th house represents our relationship with our father. The 10th house represents status and career, the impact we make on the world, the impact that we make on others. Saturn represents buildings and structures and the skeletal system. That's what Saturn represents. And that's why the 10th house is associated with like wanting to make an impact on the world, wanting to make an impact on others. Because our skeletons, our bone, is the last thing that is left once we die. That's the last thing that is left after we die, is our skeleton system. And the 11th house is Aquarius, which represents elder siblings, because Saturn is a planet that represents older people and older things. And yeah, it represents older people, older things, so it represents like our elder siblings. It represents the financial gains that we can get from other people. It comes after the 10th house. So the 10th house is career, and the 11th house will be like our associates, our co-workers, or just your network circle that you have in your professional environment and what you're able to gain from them. So I'm just going to use an example. Let's say that the 10th house is college. The 10th house has nothing to do with education. I'm just using an example. Let's say the 10th house is college, and then in college you can network a lot. So your ability to network and gain, and the type of crowd that you have around you, is like seen from the 11th house. What you're able to gain from your profession. What are you able to gain? Yeah, basically what you're able to gain from your profession or from large groups of people and crowds, is seen from the 11th house. And Aquarius is associated with it, because Aquarius is a natural born leader. Capricorn is a leader. Aquarius is a leader. Leo's like a natural leader because of the two planets that's ruled them. Sun, which is like, everything revolves around the sun. And then you got Saturn. And you can even say that Sagittarius is a leader, but I'm getting off topic. Aquarius is like this leader, and it's like here to wake people up and make them think and move forward and reform stuff. And that's why the 11th house is associated with like large groups and crowds, and being able to gain from those groups and crowd and lead them. I'll get more into this stuff when I make a video detailing why Aquarius is so deep and so spiritual. But those are the two houses that Saturn rules. Saturn represents karma, debt, our father, death, diseases, delays, boundaries. That's what Saturn is. So when Saturn goes retrograde in your birth chart, it's actually a very good position, a good thing for Saturn to go retrograde in your birth chart. Because when Saturn goes retrograde in your birth chart, you'll learn from the lessons that Saturn has to offer you quicker. You know, we all go through a Saturn return. Like within 28, 29 years, Saturn goes back into the sign that it was in when you was born. And when it's retrograde, I told you the qualities of the planet become internalized. So you'll sort of learn the lessons quicker in regards to the house that Saturn is in. You'll pay your karmic debt a little bit quicker, likely to pay it off quicker in regards to the house that Saturn is in when it's in retrograde, because you'll just reflect more. It's like touching fire and you burn yourself. You're likely not going to touch that fire again. You're like, oh, I burned myself, I shouldn't touch it again. That's like an example of something that would happen with a Saturn return. Let's say Saturn in the 7th house, you get into a relationship, you date someone, it didn't work out, or it was a terrible experience. You're not going to try to want to date people like that no more because you had such a terrible experience. Or let's say that, you know, I can't come up with no really good example for Saturn through the houses, but I'm just give you random examples. Basically, you'll learn your lesson quicker. When you make a mistake, when you make a boo-boo, when you hurt yourself, or when life throws you down to the ground, you'll reflect, why did I just get fired? Why did I just lose this job? Why couldn't I get this car? Why couldn't I keep this girl? Why couldn't this happen? What about what did my actions, why did my actions give this result? You'll think and you'll reflect more, and you'll come back a second time with a well thought out plan and more prepared. Because Saturn likes planning. Saturn likes stretching things out. Saturn likes doing things for a long period of time. Saturn likes putting organization and structure. So when it's retrograde, it's sort of intensified. It'll be even more order, even more structure, maybe even more a delay. But, you know, I don't know. You're likely to be more prepared for your Saturn return with a retrograded Saturn, because you spent so much time more than others reflecting and thinking on things in regards to the house that Saturn was sitting in when it was in retrograde. And like I said, to go see the houses, to see how Saturn will affect you in transiting. Look at the house that Saturn is in, and you'll see the 2 houses that it rules, which is Aquarius and Capricorn, and you'll likely just be more reflective and think more on things in regards to the lessons of the houses that Saturn is ruling. But for the people who are real curious and want to know about how a retrograde might affect them romantically, ultimately I would say you look at your 7th house. You look at the Lord of the 7th house, which means you look at the planet that rules the sign of your 7th house. And I would say whenever that planet goes retrograde, something might occur romantically. Maybe an ex will hit you up, or maybe something might happen in your relationships. It could be friendships, or romantic, or an ex. And you'll also look at wherever that retrograded planet, you'll look for what houses it rules. For example, if you got Virgo in the 7th house, you know, during a Virgo retrograde, a Mercury retrograde, you'll look at what house Mercury is transiting. You'll look at your 7th house, and you look at wherever Gemini is, and you should see something might happen in those areas of your life. If you got Libra in the 7th house, or Taurus in the 7th house, when Venus goes retrograde, something might happen in your 7th house, or wherever Taurus is. And that's how you'll see. You know, for maybe encounters that was really less romantic and like a real relationship, and it was just more sexual, you'll probably look at the 5th house, because the 5th house is associated with death. I mean, associated with sex. I think the 5th house is associated with sex more so than the 8th, in my opinion. But you will look at maybe the Lord of the 5th. So if your 5th house Lord is Sun, is Leo, which will make the Lord Sun, well, damn, you can't do the 5th house if it's Leo, because Sun doesn't go retrograde. So let's say that your 5th house Lord was Capricorn. I mean, it's Capricorn and the Lord is Saturn. During a Saturn retrograde, maybe something might happen sexually. Maybe you reflect on sexual encounters. Maybe you'll be in a drought or delay. I don't know. Y'all gotta add things together. It's a million puzzle pieces and a million scenarios I can give you, but that is how you'll possibly see something happen romantically, by looking at the Lord of the 7th and looking at the Lord of the 5th. See when they go retrograde. See whatever houses that they rule. Something might happen. Something might not happen. Retrogrades aren't the end of the world. Retrogrades don't necessarily mean that some romantic encounter might happen. Having a retrograded planet in your birth chart, you know, it might perform and do better and give you better results than if you didn't have it retrograded in your chart. You can even argue that, you know, you might have been purposely born karmically during a retrograde, because that planet being retrograded in your birth chart will help you pay off a past life karmic debt, or help you overcome and learn something that you wasn't able to learn and do over in your last lifetime, over the course and series of several lifetimes. But this is the end of my video of planets in retrograde and why they're not the end of the world, and why they don't mean that goddamn X is going to hit you up. Thanks for watching.